We're making great progress so far. It's time to start working on the posts. Before we do that, we'll have to talk about the loop first. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the Loop's handbook page. Let's check it out. Here's what WordPress has to say about the loop. The loop is the default mechanism WordPress uses for outputting posts through a theme's template files. How many posts are retrieved is determined by the number of posts to show per page defined in the reading settings. Within the loop, WordPress retrieves each post to be displayed on the current page and formats it according to your theme's instructions. The loop extracts the data for each post from the WordPress database and inserts the appropriate information in place of each template tag. Any HTML or PHP code in the loop will be processed for each post. To put it simply, the loop is true to its name. It loops through each post retrieved for the current page one at a time and performs the actions specified in your theme. So what WordPress is saying is that it's just a set of functions that WordPress provides so you can display posts. It's called the loop because you actually have to use these functions inside of a loop. The loop is basically an array of posts. Sometimes the loop will only have one post, and sometimes it can have several posts. It varies from page to page. It's pretty simple, so let's get started. First things first, we have to add support for featured images. I'm currently looking at a function called Add Theme Support on the WordPress developer site. I'll provide a link to it in the resource section of this lecture. WordPress comes with some features that we can take advantage of right out of the box. It is possible and allowed for us to create our own version of these features, but that's beyond the scope of this course. It's also not common practice to do this, even in commercial themes. One of these features is called post thumbnails. All we have to do is call this function and pass in the post-thumbnails argument, and WordPress will activate the thumbnail feature. This feature will take care of generating a featured image in various sizes. If we take a look at the documentation, you'll notice that there is a second argument that allows you to specify certain options that come with each feature. If you scroll down far enough, you'll find more information specifically for the second parameter. We can pass in an array of post types. We haven't talked about post types yet, but basically it's a way to categorize certain pieces of content. We can choose to specify which post types should have post thumbnails. If you don't pass in an array, then post thumbnails will be enabled for all post types. I prefer to enable thumbnails for all post types, so I'm not going to take advantage of the second parameter. It's always good practice to check to see if you can pass in more options. It allows you to customize certain features for your theme. Let's use this function now. Open your editor and edit the setup file. Right at the top, I'm going to call the Add Theme Support function and pass in the value post-thumbnails. To reiterate, inside the function, we tell WordPress we'd like to support one of its built-in features. We pass in which feature we'd like to use. In our case, we want to use the post-thumbnails feature. That's it. To check if this feature is enabled, go to the admin dashboard and try viewing a post. On the side, you'll see a section for the featured image. Previously, this didn't exist, but with one line of code, we were able to add this feature to our site. Keep in mind that enabling these features are totally optional. You are allowed to make your own versions of these features, but that's not generally common. It's much better to take advantage of the inbuilt solutions to help save time. Now that we're done, let's move on to the loop. Go to your editor and open the index template. You'll find a comment that says posts. This is where we will be running the loop. You'll notice I have some static blog posts. We don't need these anymore, so let's delete all of them except one. We'll be using this one as a reference. Next, let's add some PHP tags and start coding the loop. I want to create a conditional statement. We're going to call a function called havePosts. This function has no parameters and it does one simple thing. It checks to see whether or not the current page has any posts. The question is, how does it know that? What WordPress will do is read the URL. Just based on the URL, WordPress will determine what posts should be displayed and how many. It's all handled for you. Moving on, this function will return true or false depending on what it finds. If true, then we should start displaying some posts. Before I continue, you'll notice I'm using curly brackets for my conditional statements. Let's open up the index template for the theme 2017. You'll notice that this theme doesn't use curly brackets. Instead, the developers use the end if statement for their conditional statements. This right here is preference and what makes your code readable to you. If you want to use this style of coding, then go for it. You won't face any performance or security issues by using end if or curly brackets. It's all preference. For this course, I'll be using curly brackets. Continuing on, we'll create a while loop and call the same function again. This may seem like it'll run an infinite loop, but we can fix that easily in just a moment. Before we go any further, let's go into the reading settings page in the admin dashboard. There is an option for restricting the number of posts per page. Let's set this to 4 so we can set up some pagination later on. Let's also set for each article in feed show to summary. After you've saved your changes, let's go back to the index template. Inside the loop, we're going to call a function called the post. This function does two things. First, it will query the database and get the current post in the loop. Once again, WordPress is smart enough to know which post to grab. The second thing it does is check to see if there are any more posts after the current post. If there isn't, then the value returned by the havePosts function will be false. This will stop the loop from running infinitely. It's very important we call this function first before we do anything else inside the loop. Otherwise, we'll end up just using the same post over and over again. This assures us that we'll get a new post on each iteration. So remember that static post I told you to leave in the template? Let's cut and paste that inside the loop like so. That'll do it. Let's refresh the home page and see what we get. You should now see the list of posts. All of them will be the same. It's pretty broken, but that's fine. We'll fix this soon. There should only be 4 posts, since that's what we set in the reading settings page. In the next lecture, we'll continue working on this.